Hey, what's up everybody? Kyle Buckland here with another lesson for you. I know everybody's been waiting. I've been getting all kinds of emails saying, where have you been? So I wanted to take just a minute to explain a little bit about what took place in the last couple months with the videos. My original plans were to do a series of beginner videos and then also eventually offer some more advanced classes for sale through I thought that you could offer them for purchase through YouTube, but what had happened is they changed that so that I can't offer a video for sale through YouTube. You have to go through other steps to monetize your videos, and so I'm working on doing that, but I'm not going to be able to offer videos for sale on YouTube. So then my second thought was, well, I could have a separate platform, almost like an online class website where you come and sign up for the advanced classes. So my next thought was I need to have a little bit more filming involved in these advanced videos because I'll be offering them for sale. And so I got a second camera, but I made the mistake of buying a cheaper Walmart version of the GoPro, and the camera just didn't work. It gave me all kinds of trouble. I recorded one painting, got halfway through the painting, and the camera stopped recording without letting me know. So I got to the end of the painting and I didn't have my film footage of my palette. So I had to start over again, and I read about it and it said that happens sometimes, so you just got to keep an eye on it while you're recording. So during the second painting I set up and got everything cleaned up and got all set back up and started recording again, and this time I got through the painting without the camera stopping. But when I went to get the video off of the camera froze and it wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't turn off, it wouldn't do anything. So the only way to get it to work again is I had to reset the camera. And when I reset it, I lost all my footage. So at this point, I was starting to get frustrated, and I went out and bought a second camera that's a little bit more expensive, similar to the camera that I used to record this shot. What I wanted was to have one camera recording my palette while the other camera recorded the canvas and the subject matter. So I set up again. I got everything cleaned up and set up when I was going to do it a third time, and got a big canvas and got going on it. And everything seemed to be working fine. I was so excited. I said, I'm finally going to get all this pulled together and be able to make this video. And this is over the course of a couple weeks I was doing all this. And I got the cameras back into the studio and started working on the computer on them, and something was wrong with the way the video file was formatted from the one camera to the other camera, and it wouldn't let me combine them on the editor. And obviously I'm a little better at painting than I am at working with computers and software and editing and digital cameras and all that. So at that point I just got a little bit discouraged, and I sort of set everything aside for a few, and then a couple weeks turned into a month, and the cameras were sitting there, and I thought, man, I need to get back to that. And every time I would think about it, I would just find something else to do, and I thought, oh gosh, that's too complicated, I can't figure that out right now. But in the spirit of perseverance, I know I talk a lot about, you know, if you fail, don't get discouraged, and to keep painting and keep trying different things until you find something that works. So I thought, well, okay, the universe is telling me that right now I'm not supposed to make the advanced videos with the multiple camera angles and charge for them. So what I've decided to do is to offer the classes. I'm going to take it to the next level. So it's not really advanced yet. I would call this more of an intermediate. There's a lot of information to be talked about when it comes to painting. And I mean, really, I could just teach on a beginner level probably for another year, and we'd still have stuff to talk about. But I know everybody's anxious about the new colors and excited about using a paintbrush right from the beginning. So I do want to start doing that. But I'm going to keep the videos free and on YouTube. But if you do want to contribute, the way that I would get paid for this is a couple different ways. You can link to my Patreon account, which is in the description, or if you also just want to donate money for the videos, you can send money to kyle.buckland@gmail.com through PayPal. So that's my name, kyle.buckland@gmail.com. I'm just basically setting out a tip jar, a digital tip jar. So if you want to become a patron, you can go to the Patreon page and sign up for a pledge where you'll pledge a certain amount every month, and you can even get some rewards that way. or if you just feel like you just want to donate a one-time donation or just when you can, then you can also donate to my PayPal account at kyle.buckland@gmail.com. You can just send a payment through PayPal. So, and if you'd like to do that, I really appreciate it. If you can't right now, I understand that too. But the way that I'm going to be able to continue to do these videos and to make money doing them so that I can continue to do them is going to be through donations and through Patreon at this point. And this will also help for people who can't afford the videos, because by donating, you're helping me be able to put them out there and offer them sort of as a pay-what-you-can basis. So, also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and you can hit a like on the video if you like what you see. That always helps me out too. So I really appreciate it, and I'm going to go ahead and get into some of this intermediate level stuff. Now, we'll still be building on a lot of the basics, so if you haven't watched my beginner videos, I recommend you go back and check those out. There's a lot of great material. The number one, I've numbered them so that you can keep them in order. The first video I did, I talk a lot about materials, so but we'll be adding a couple colors to the palette here. And I've stained my canvas. Now, for these level videos, I'm going to be staining my canvas. I'm not always going to be using the ivory black. I think in a lot of the beginner videos I use the ivory black for the initial tone. But we're going to be experimenting with these three earth colors. So I still have these earth colors here: the burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and ivory black. And this tone right here is burnt sienna and yellow ochre with a little bit of ivory black mixed in. So I'm using all three of these colors, but I'm leaning a little bit more towards one or the other. So in this time I'm leaning a little bit more towards burnt sienna. The way I do that is I take this paper towel, and you've probably seen this on the beginner videos. I just want to get a little bit of medium and some pigment on there, and then I rub it on there. Now the trick is to not get too much pigment on there. You want to rub it on and then come back and wipe it back off. Think of it like when you stain wood or something with an oil-based stain. You want it to stain the canvas, but you don't want a lot of pigment on the canvas. So, in the past, we've started our paintings with just the paper towels, but this time we're going to be going in and using some paint brushes right off the bat. So I'm still using these white bristle brushes, and medium to large sizes. We'll use a little bit smaller sizes too, so 2s, 4s, 6, 8s, 10s, those sizes. Flats is mostly what I use. I use some rounds. Just find out what you like. A lot of this is going to be experimenting. You're going to have to experiment a little bit. So I'm going to take my burnt sienna and my ultramarine blue, and let me go ahead and tell you about these new colors too. This right here is a permanent, there's a couple different ones you can use. This permanent rose madder. It's sometimes called permanent madder or rose madder. Watch out for alizarin crimson. There's certain brands that are more permanent than others, but you want to, for this rosy reddish color, I would look at rose madder, permanent rose madder. Look for the ones that have the word permanent in them. I think that the pigment for the alizarin crimson PR83 is, it fades real easily. But there are some colors you have to watch out, that eventually any color is going to fade if you put it in direct sunlight or something like that. So in order to avoid that, what you can do is you can get something called Gamvar, which is a nice varnish that Gamblin oil paints makes. And it actually has a UV protectant in the varnish. So when you varnish the painting when you're done, the colors won't ever fade because they're protected from the UV rays. So, this rose madder is a very vibrant red, a very rich purplish red color that leans, more towards blue than say our cadmium red light, which is sort of an orangish. It leans a little bit more towards yellow. And this is our second color that we're going to be adding to the palette for these more intermediate level demos. This is Pthalo blue, and it's spelled P-T-H-A-L-O, Pthalo, but the P is silent. So this is a super vibrant greenish blue, You might call it like a turquoise or a sky blue. Let me show you what happens when we put a tiny bit of it into white. You can see, get a real nice vibrant blue color. So you really want to be careful when using this color. It's very strong. A little bit of it goes a long way. So you want to be careful, because if you get too much in your paintbrush, you could accidentally turn a whole mixture blue before you know it. So be careful about that. And these two colors are going to open up a lot of possibilities. You'll see as we go. I'll talk more about them. And so for our dark, we had been using burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. We can also use now cadmium red light and ultramarine blue. I want you to experiment with using this. It's going to make a nice purple. Nice dark purple. And we're going to look at our subject matter, and I want to do just some basic sketching. And this is going to be a painting of this particular tree here. So I want to, before where we had paintings where I was looking down the road at a subject matter, this is more up close and personal. So I want to design this painting to really show off this big tree in the middle. And so I'm going to put it sort of to the center, but I don't want to split the canvas in half exactly. So I want to go to the left just a little bit. And I want to come up, and this tree goes one way and then turns the other way. You'll see trees do that a lot. And I'm exaggerating the movement there. So I'm picking up on something the tree is doing, and then I'm exaggerating it a little bit. Now it has another tree that comes off the side here, and this tree gets out of the way. See, the trees are always looking for sunlight, so they're usually getting out of each other's way. So you'll see this a lot in trees, and it creates a nice rhythm. It gives a very natural feeling to the tree, because this is what trees do. They try to stay out of each other's way. So I've got some, got a hillside right here. I want to make sure I'm not splitting the canvas in half this way either. So this hillside is going to be a little higher up than halfway up. Okay. Now I've got a branch that comes off here and shoots up this way. So in the beginner videos where we were jumping right in and just going after the big shapes, now I want you to slow down and take a little bit of time to draw on the canvas. So we don't have to make, a complete coloring book exactly, but we want to get a little bit more detail in our drawing. Got a tree here that comes up, and it goes this way, and then it turns and kind of shoots up here. You still see at first it's getting away from that bigger tree. So a lot of times you'll have one big tree, and then you'll have the littler trees that grew up later, and they fan out around the bigger tree. And then there's some dark leaves down in here, but we've also got a few spots where the sunlight is bouncing down in here too. So we'll play up on that here in a little bit. Now thinking about design stems. So I've talked about these in the previous video, so you should know what I'm talking about when I say design stem. So I'm looking at the oval or circular design stem here. So we have a nice opportunity to really move our eye around this composition by suggesting lines and rhythm, the direction of our brush strokes and shapes, to move our eye up and around the corners of this composition. So now I'm going to take a number 6 or number 8, somewhere around there, brush, and I'm going to go in with this cadmium red light and ultramarine blue. And it's going to make a nice rich purple. I'm going to add just a touch of white to it, because we don't want it to paint a hole in the canvas. Now if you get too much white, it's going to get really milky and chalky, so there's a fine line here. You want it nice grayed down purple. And I'm going to go in and just real quickly brush in the shape of this tree. Now we still want to carry our lessons from the beginning videos into this, so we want to keep things simple. Now if I look at the colors here, we've got purple. This tree over here is a little bit more yellow, so I don't want to go bright yellow, but I can add a little yellow ochre to my purple and make a nice warm gray color. It's not necessarily yellow, but it has more yellow in it, so it's a little bit lighter and definitely a different shade of gray than that darker purple. Now the next tree over here is a little darker, and it goes back to that purple color, so I'm going to go ahead, but it's actually darker than the first one. So I'm going to use a little thicker paint here to get it to be a little darker, a little less white. And so we can still play up our warm and cools, the temperature. If I want to warm this up a little bit, I just add a little of that cadmium red light to the purple mixture. You can see I'm dipping down into my medium as I go. You want your paint to be fairly thin, almost like an ink at this stage. And that medium is my mixture of Gamblin Galkyd painting medium with Gamsol paint thinners. So 2/3 Gamsol to 2/3 Galkyd to 1/3 Gamsol thinner. Okay. We've got a dark one over here too. Now, notice here how I accidentally did this. I made this the same shape as that. I don't want that because that's not interesting. So, see, at this stage I can still wipe stuff out because everything's nice and thin. So that's the good thing about working nice and thin like this. So now I can redraw this tree, and I can be sure to not do that same mistake. So I want this to come up here. It's got a little thing, but then I'm going to send it back out this way. Make sure you take your branches all the way up to the top of your canvas. There's a tendency for beginners to get a branch going, and it'll get up here and they'll just kind of fizzle it out because they start to get nervous about the edge of the canvas. But really, you really want to suggest the way this tree grows, the limitless strength and energy and power in these trees, will really be suggested by the way they go up and out of the edge of the canvas. And we can go ahead and do some linear drawing here, like we can outline some stuff a little bit. So this is something new that we didn't really do a lot in the beginner videos. I can go ahead and outline this tree just a little bit, just to give it a little bit more form, and just some dark spots here. So I'm already starting to introduce a little bit more advanced mark making techniques, I guess you could call them, into the beginning stages of the painting. But I don't want to get distracted too much away from my big shapes. So I'm keeping the big shapes in mind. So before I get too much further into any drawing, let me see if I can figure out where my dark green shapes go in the background. Okay, so these are going to be dark, but there's areas, so this is where you want to squint down and really compare values. Now I know I talk a lot about values, but it's really important how dark and how light is an area. So I've got some green back here. A lot of it is almost the same value as these trees. Now some of it's lighter, but down here it gets darker than the trees. So I've got, like up here, the green is slightly lighter. So watch this. So let's go ahead and make a green with, and you know what, I'm going to put out more ultramarine blue. I always say this, if you feel like you're starting to run out of a color, stop and put out more, because if not, you might be tempted to skimp on it, and then that wouldn't be good. So don't hesitate to stop and put out more paint. So I'm going to take a little bit of this cadmium yellow light, a little bit of this ultramarine blue and make a nice rich green. I'm going to add just a touch of burnt sienna to it. And the red that's in the burnt sienna is going to dull down the green a little bit. Now I want a pretty good pile of this. So, because this is going to cover a pretty large area. So I want to go ahead and mix up enough so I'm not having to come back and remix it. Now see, this is where it's darker. It's darker than the trees. There's areas down here where it's darker than the actual trees themselves. And I'm using medium to make this thin, but I don't want to thin it out too much because I don't want to lighten the value of it. I want it to be nice and dark. And there's areas where the green in the background is the same value as the trees. It's going to be more like this value of green. Which is slightly lighter than that first green we put on there. And then there's also areas, let's see, where it's lighter, so we'll make it a little lighter, just as an illustration so you can really see this. Now, got some areas up here where it's starting to glow. Whoop, almost lost my paint. When you do this, you'll want to put this palette down on your French easel. I use a French easel. The only reason I have the palette up here is so that you can see it, but it makes it a little difficult when you're using thick paint because sometimes it'll start to get away from you. So you want to be careful about that. That's too light, so I want it more like this, something like right in here. And some of this comes up into here, over top of the sky. So just like as if we were using the paper towel, but instead of, we're already starting to get into some value differences. So instead of doing big, giant, dark shapes, now I'm starting to break things up a little bit right off the get-go here. It sounded weird when I said it. The get-go. I guess that's a saying. Might be making up expressions. Okay. Right off the get-go. Yeah, that's a thing. Okay. And there's even some areas up here where some of that darker green is too. So what I'm going to do is lay down this lighter green. This is where the sunlight is coming through and hitting the other side of the leaves. But then I can take that darker green color and come up into it. It needs a little bit of that red to tone it down, that burnt sienna. And come up into it. You can see how it doesn't have to be real complicated. In other words, I'm not getting in there and trying to paint a ton of leaves or anything. I'm just suggesting some big shapes, and the main thing is I'm paying a lot of attention to value. And I want to go ahead and bring that dark green all the way down to the bottom. And I'm just going to use a big brush for this. Mix up some more of my dark green and add a little bit of burnt sienna to it. And keeping it thin here because I'm going to come back over and there's a little variation in it, and that's okay. And there's actually some lighter green. And I added just a touch of that phthalo blue. You saw that just the tip of my brush touched into it. And I want a little cooler green. So that phthalo has that real bluish green. You can see it there. Really stands out. So there's some more bluish green leaves over here. I'll go ahead and lay them in. And now to keep this color throughout the painting, I don't want it in just one place. So it's a very, it stands out. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up a little bit more of the same color, it's that green with just a touch of that phthalo, and I'm going to throw it around in some areas here. I don't want to put too much of it up here where my sunlit green is, because we want that to be warmer because the sunlight that's up there near the top. And let's mix up a nice purple using that rose madder. Little rose madder and a little ultramarine blue is to make a nice dark purple, and then add a touch of white so we can see it. Sometimes when you make a real dark color, you got to add a little bit of white just so you can see it. And so it's going to make a very vibrant purple. We're going to use this down here where kind of look through. I can even make it a little bit more red. There's some spots where I can see the hillside, the dirt on the hillside, and it has a dark reddish purple color to it. The value is just slightly darker than the green even. So we can just pop those in. I want to keep looking at these big shapes, so before I get in, it's tempting to go ahead and start drawing the trees and stuff like that, but I want to be careful because I want the sky and everything to be behind my trees, so I got to go ahead and paint that in there. Now, this sky is just coming through as a nice bright yellow light. So there's a cadmium yellow light and a bunch of white. I'm going to go ahead and load up some real thick paint here. And another thing I've done before I started is I whipped up my white paint. So you'll see this in the other videos. I take a little bit of my medium, maybe about 10 drops, and I put it into my big pile of white paint, and I whip it up with a palette knife and make it nice and soft. And that makes it easy to get the paint to come off your paintbrush. So I'm going to pick out some big areas here where this sky is coming through. And I want to throw a little bit of this cadmium red. When I squint down, I see an orange tint to this sky. And that might be because of all the green that's in the painting. Because the complementary color of green is red. And when we have a bunch of green, it's going to throw red into the other areas of the painting, because that's the way complementary colors work. When you stare at red for a long time, and then you look at a white piece of paper, the paper is going to look green. So because we have so much green, where the sky's coming through, there's some red to it. Some of that's from the sun now too, warming up the sky, the clouds. And you see how this thicker paint, I'm able to come right back over top of these stained areas and just shape up the leaves and suggest where the sky is coming through the leaves. And we want to be careful because we want to be aware of where our hillside is. We don't want any sky poking through down here, because that wouldn't make any sense. So we're keeping that in mind as we're painting these areas. And there's also some trees way back there that have a sort of a bluish, purplish tint. use some of this purple I already mixed, and then throw some white into it. This little hillside, this little color is sort of suggestive of a tree line way back there. In fact, I'm going to throw some orange over top of it. Okay, so now at this point, I do want to come back and restate my trees again, and we're going to draw a little bit more. But what I want to do is get a nice dark purple on my brush, and I want to come back and draw those trees in there again. It's like a push and pull. You sort of lost the edge, come back and redraw it. And then come back and paint in some of this dark tree again. Now we can start playing around a little bit. We don't have to be literal in the sense that we have to copy exactly what's there. So we want to use some of these dark shapes as rhythmic lines to move your eye around the painting. So there's not necessarily a tree here. I want one to be there because I want your eye to come up and around that side of the composition. So like I said before, don't feel like you're tied to what's in front of you. You can use, at this stage, if you've painted the big shapes in the beginner lessons, now you can start playing around with nature. And you can start to design nature how you want it to be. I want to add some more yellow to that one tree that I said had some yellow in it. The yellow and burnt sienna. I'm going to mix it with this purple just to dull it down a little bit. And see how I'm not covering up completely the original color. Whoa, I'm getting attacked by a bee. Alright. This is live plein air painting, folks. But so I'm leaving some of that darker gray, and then I'm coming back with some of this yellow. And we could do the same thing with this tree. Okay, there's a nice purple, so let's make that purple again with the rose madder and the ultramarine blue and white. Nice vibrant purple color. I come back and pop that purple in certain areas in this tree here. You'll find that there's certain colors that you use a lot more than others, and you can buy several tubes of those colors when you buy paint. I'm always going through ultramarine blue. I use it a lot to make a lot of greens. It's a nice dark blue for darker purples. So if you find that you're running out of a certain color a lot, that might be a sign that you want to order twice as much of that color. And there's some dark green on the tree, so I'm looking for colors now that aren't necessarily the first color I painted in there, but colors that would work. And a lot of times when you're doing this, the trick is to have the similar value, so I can get away with different colors in these trees, but keep them the same value. For example, if I wanted the nice light blue color in that yellowish tree, what I would have to do is make a blue that's the same value and has a little bit of that yellow in it too, as this tree. So see here, we can come right down in here, put some blue in there. But because it's the same value as that yellow, it really works. Well, we've got some blue sky popping in up there, so let's go ahead and take advantage of that while it's there. I kind of like the way it looks. And this is not going to be a super vibrant blue because we're dealing with sky, areas of the sky through a lot of leaves. Whoops. They're just popping it through in a couple little areas. And we can use it to carry our eye across the canvas. And now I want to start layering some stuff in front of all this that we just painted. So what do I mean by layering it? Well, one thing I mean is I'm going to start using some thicker paint. Another thing is I'm going to start bringing shapes over top of some of these shapes in the foreground here. Let me cover up just a few areas here. And actually, on second thought, before I start layering stuff up, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these little, let me find them here. I'm going to take some small round brushes. Okay, so we've got some round bristle brushes, size like 2 and 4. And I want to go ahead, I'm going to start with the 4. And I'm going to get some dark purple on it. And maybe a little dark green, and I want to go ahead and paint in some of these branches that are back in the distance here. So watch how I'm holding the brush and I'm twisting it as I come up to make different shapes. Make these little branches, they twist and turn. Be careful not to get in the habit of just making your branches come straight up or straight out. Take a look at a branch and imagine your paintbrush walking along with it, and think about the way the paintbrush has to turn and twist to keep up with the way that the branch grows. We have some of these branches that are more of that yellow gray. Up in the foreground here. Not all the branches are coming up from the bottom, so sometimes you have branches that are coming down off of trees. So don't forget to add some variety in the direction of where does the branch start. Sometimes you have a branch that comes from outside the canvas and comes into the composition. And now I'm going to get the even smaller brush, and now we're doing like a number 2 round. You can even use like the little small synthetic brushes that are a little bit softer than the bristle for some of these smaller brush strokes. And see how I pull off the branch at the end of the brush stroke. So you want a lot of pressure at first, and then as you get to the end of the stroke, you pull it off and it pulls it up to a point, and it gets a real natural look in your branches. And we want to do enough of these, but we don't want to do too many. So I want to look here. I need to redraw this. This tree right here. I'm starting to lose it in all the other painting. Back to the small brush again, small round. And sometimes, you know, a lot of times you want to come off of a tree. Like for example, here's a tree, here's a small branch coming off of the tree. But you don't always have to come off the tree. Sometimes it looks good just to have a few branches, just kind of, well that one did come off the tree, but sometimes you want to have a few branches that are just in there, just kind of. Now, you don't want a lot of those, but it looks like they come out of the group of leaves. So see, those come in from the outside there. Look how we've already got a nice S. There's this motion right here, and then we've got a motion right here, and then we've got sort of turns back this way. And we can exaggerate that just a little bit too. We can play up some of these lighter colors. So remember I said there was some sunlight bouncing into the foreground when we started? It's changed now, but I took note of it, and I can kind of remember a little bit of what it looked like. So we want to take this big curve here. It comes back around here, and then if we catch a few little glints of sunlight right in here, to kind of bring your eye back around this way. It's creating a nice rhythm throughout our painting. I want another light colored tree trunk, sort of a pinkish color over here. There is one over there, so I'm going to go ahead and pick it out. Okay. So remember now, I'm thinking about stuff that I'm going to be layering over. So I want to keep stuff pretty thin still. And fluid, that's going to help the paint flow out of the paintbrush and really make these fluid brush strokes. And let's hit a couple leaves that are way back there. Now some of these leaves are going to be this rich golden yellow color because they're being hit by the sun and they're glowing. And some of them extend out in front of these little sky areas off of these groups of leaves that are up there already. So. And you can see I'm just touching, letting go. Going to the next area. I'm not sitting there and messing with the brush stroke. Once I put it down, you got to let it live. You can't go messing with it. That's when stuff looks funny. You can tell there was a struggle if you're constantly going back and repainting areas. So try to think about what you want, and then just try to get it. And even if you're not 100% satisfied with the way it happened, just leave it alone and go on to the next area. And eventually you'll get better at really nailing what you want on the first try. It's like I was saying about my videos, you know, trying to get them to work using the other camera it's never wasted time. You know, I had to remind myself that. I was starting to get frustrated because I would think, gosh, I wasted all this time. But in actuality, it's the time that it takes to get to the good video, and or to the more the ones that I failed on trying to record are actually steps in the right direction to the more successful recorded video. So don't ever feel like you're wasting your time, even if you're not getting things exactly like you want them. You know, it takes all the effort to get to where you want to go to. So just keep plugging away at it, and things will start to happen eventually. And don't get discouraged if they don't happen right away. This is not, you know, we don't want to try to rush to get to the end result. Focus too much on the end result, we'll miss a lot of nuances that we could learn if we just were patient enough to take the time to learn them. Now I want to add some variety to this one tree, this dark tree. It's got some ivy growing on it, so I'm mixing up a nice dark green, and I'm dipping into that phthalo a little bit. So I want this rich dark green here. I'm going to add this in little short strokes right down the edge of this. And see, I don't want to do that on all the trees. I just want to do it on one, and it creates a little bit of variety in them. I'm going to outline this just a little bit more so you can see it over here, this lighter tree. Maybe add a couple little details to it. Okay, now I want to start layering on some thick paint. So I've got my background established. Now let's think about, this is probably as far as we were taking some of the beginner lessons. And so now that we're moving along here, I want you to start thinking about, okay, what do I want this thing to look like, and can I picture it in my mind? I always say that when you start, you should try to picture what you want the painting to look like when it's finished. So now I can start looking and thinking. I love the texture of oil paint. So one thing I want to do is create some textural strokes that pull the foreground forward. And I can do that by mixing up a lot of paint here. Ultramarine blue and yellow ochre, a little cadmium yellow light, and very little medium. So nice thick blobs of paint. And I want to have these come out here. I'm going to add a little bit more phthalo blue to them so that they stand out a little bit more. Right. And out in this foreground, this nice dark blue. Get this bluish green to come out a little bit more. And we can start layering dark over light. So as I come up with this dark green, add a little red to it. And I'm going to start overlapping some of my brush work, some of those lighter colors back there, and pull some of these areas forward. Just like we're creating another layer of depth onto this painting. And really push the paint out of the brush and then scoop it up. So I'm mixing up the color, I'm pushing and twisting the brush out, getting the paint to come out of the brush, and then coming back and scooping up a big blob of it. And it's almost like sculpting. So I've got all that paint now on the end of my brush. So now I want to just put it down and leave it alone. See? Put it down, leave it alone. And there's actually some sunlight getting down into this area here, and it's reflecting off this ivy, and it's a very light color. I don't want to do too much of this because it would just start to look strange, but there's a light purple quality to it. And if I just pop it in, in a few areas here, going to give you a feeling of light coming down and being reflected. Then there's sort of a warm yellow to it too in areas, a yellowish green. And this is going to lead up into some other sunlit colors as we get up in away from the ivy and into these more yellowish leaves. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and get this bright yellow green color, some thick paint. So you see I'm starting to create the illusion of sunlight being filtered down in behind these leaves and hitting the hillside, which is what we want. You wouldn't originally think that that light blue color would look like sunlight, but when you start to work it in there and then you paint this other yellowish green in there to kind of show what's going on, it starts to create the illusion. So that's what, I say trust your instincts. If you think you see a color, you probably do. Sometimes your mind will tell you, well, that sunlight can't be that light, pale color, because it doesn't make any sense. Sunlight should be yellow and not blue. But it's where it's reflecting off of that ivy. The ivy leaves have a very reflective surface, and we're getting some of the blue from the sky reflected back into it too. Now I want to use this green to carry your eye up and around. I've got a lot of light up here. There's some areas where the leaves are silhouetted against the trees, and they sort of turn this reddish, purplish, pinkish color. It's light. It's actually the sunlight's like eating through the leaf and turning it this light purple color. Now it's another instance where, it's an odd color, but my eye is perceiving it, so I go ahead and paint it in there like I see it. Have some little areas down here that are hit by the sun too. Maybe see a little bit of this dirt being lit up by the sun, and it turns this nice pink color. So we'll just pop a little bit of that warm pinkish orange color down in there, just to show where that sunlight's hitting. I don't want to lose this area where these trees grow out of the ground. I want to show that. I think that's important to, at least on this big tree, to give the feeling of the character of the tree. I've got some leaves that are coming down in the foreground. I don't think you can see them in the camera. They're hanging down off the tree right in front of, sort of in front of my face a little bit more. And so I'm going to bring those down into here. And they're big and dark, and they come right in front of everything that's back there, so it's creating sort of this tunnel effect, which is nice. There's a couple more here. That's helped create this, it's keeping that circular motion in there, because your eye can travel around those big leaves very easily. Throw some reflected light into this tree. There's like a lot of green light bouncing all around. So I'm going to mix that in, but it's not too bright. It's dark enough that it stays in the tree. And we've got a lot of little leaves coming off of this. Oops, I got some red in there. That's alright. I'll cover it up. Some little leaves coming off of this branch here. And there's some more this warm orange color. That was the dirt getting hit by the sunlight. There's some more of it right up in here. That hillside is illuminated. I'm going to mix up a nice bluish green with my Pthalo green again, the Pthalo blue. Mix it back into that green color. You see how vibrant that green is, how it really stands out from the other colors. Now that we've layered some stuff in front of the trees, I want to come back. This is like a weaving process. So I want to come back with my round brush again and go ahead and pick out a few more of these little branches and see if we can't sneak them back in to some of the design here. So and like I said, when you're doing these branches, you want to make sure you have enough medium in your brush because you want the paint to be inky. Want to really flow off of the paintbrush real easily. That way one brush stroke goes a long way. And you can really, they say, take the brush stroke for a walk. So let's say over here, we start down here, come up, go around here, around, and it's just all one brush stroke, and I can even twist the brush to make sure I'm still getting paint off of it. Now I will admit that at this stage, when I'm finishing a painting, it gets a little harder to talk. But that's alright, because what I want you to try to do is, when you get to this stage, you should be almost using intuition, which is a tricky thing to teach, and I think it can be developed, through experience. But eventually, you'll just start to put down shapes, not so much where you know they need to go, but where you just feel like they should be. And so we're talking about a little bit more advanced stuff here, and I don't know if that's confusing or if that makes perfect sense, but it's really what the whole artist's zone is about. You know, when you hear an artist say, oh yeah, I went into the zone, it basically means that you're tapping into what some people call creative source energy, and you're basically drawing from life. From all of your experiences and all of your influences, you're actually drawing out the finishing touches, and it gets to a point where it starts to feel like the painting will finish itself. And it takes a lot of a concentration, and I think that's why it gets a little harder to talk. So you will notice that as I go into this end of the painting. But now look, I'm going to go ahead and take some dark. This is black, and I'm mixing it in with my purple because I don't want straight up black, but I want a nice dark. Then I'm going to paint some accents. So these are areas that are just a little darker than everything else we've painted before. Now they're really powerful, so be careful, but we can get in here and we can draw in some accents. They're the opposite of highlights. And I don't like this branch right here. It keeps bugging me every time I back up, so I'm going to paint it out. So don't be afraid to squint your eyes down and see what things look like. If something bugs you, just get rid of it. It's the fun of being a painter. I always felt bad for photographers because they always had to work with what was there. And I guess now with Photoshop and everything, that's not necessarily the truth still, but you know, we can move things around a little bit as we go. That's one of the benefits of being a painter. We can play with shapes. We can move stuff when we want to. And I feel like something needs to happen with this tree right here too. I think it needs to get a little thicker right in here. I'm stepping back and squinting a lot. Don't rush into this thing, you know, at the end, take your time. You can rush into the beginning of a painting. You know, you still want to have an idea of what you're up to. But you can quickly cover the canvas. So when you start to get to this stage, you want to kind of take your time and step back and look at your composition and think about what you're doing. Give the painting time to evolve. Hillside back here. I think eventually what I will do is I will eventually get all this figured out to where I have the advanced classes available for purchase. And those, like I said, there's so much to teach that it's almost endless, the amount of material, so don't worry about advancing too quickly. You know, I want to try to give you a little bit more information to work with, but I still don't want to overwhelm you. But in the meantime, if you like what you're doing and you're enjoying these videos and you feel like they're helping you improve and you want to support the channel, you know, I'm giving a couple different options for people to do that. You can go on my Patreon account that's down in the description, or if you just want to donate a one-time amount or just when you can send a PayPal payment to kyle.buckland@gmail.com. And I just want to be able to continue to put these out here and have them available as a pay what you can platform, because I think that's real important, because not everybody can afford tons and tons of art classes, but everybody should have the opportunity to at least learn some basics and be able to explore a little bit with the basics. Mixing up a nice purple again. Light, very light purple. Pop in a few more of these little light areas where the sunlight's hitting all this ivy. To put out a little bit more ultramarine blue. Told you I go through a lot of it. that shape up a little bit right there. Bring a dark branch over. We'll have it come out here. And I want to create a little, I mean there is one there a little bit, but I want to create a little variety because I want this to be broken up a little bit by a bush. Brings you up there. And in that bush we can have some smaller little branches. Come up the center of it. I want to do some more of these big leaves along the edge. This is almost like a frame, these leaves. So I can even, there's not a whole lot of them over here, but I can, just like I was saying, we can make stuff up. Part of the fun of being a painter. So, see how I'm wrapping those dark leaves around the top of that painting. Really gives you a feeling of the view being framed in. See, I'm cleaning out my brushes as I go too, don't forget. You don't want your colors mixing too much, or you'll end up with a bunch of mud. I want to create a little bit more sky coming through in some areas. I'm going to go right into my white paint here with a little bit of yellow ochre, and I want to bring the sky through in a couple spots. You see? This is more of that intuition part where you really just want to feel where these need to be. And this will come with time, I guarantee you. The more you paint and take time to reflect on what you've done, then you'll start to know what you like and how you like things to look. And it'll become more natural. And you'll have to think less and less about it. So it's really strange when I'm teaching these classes to have to take a step back and analyze what it is that I'm doing. But I think it's helpful for anybody who's starting out, and you know, I know a lot of this stuff can seem like magic at times. You watch somebody paint that's been painting for a long time, and a lot of it's hard to comprehend. So I just wanted to come out and tell you that, you know, things will get easier the more you paint, and eventually you'll do things without even questioning how or why. You'll just be able to look at your painting and see what it needs. And so this is where you're aiming for. This is the goal, but it could be a ways down the road, and that's part of the fun. If this were something that we could just tackle right off the bat and master in a couple months, then there wouldn't be as much fun in it. But it's a challenge, you know, just like anything else that you set out to do. You have it in your mind that you want to achieve something, and then, you know, the thing I try to do is not focus too much on where I'm trying to get to. I just take it one step at a time. Just like getting out and painting, you know, sometimes it can be overwhelming, the thought of going outside and getting all your gear, and it's like the task is actually way more complicated in your mind than all the separate little parts of the task. So if you start taking it one step at a time, well, what do I need to do? Well, I need to gather up my materials. So that's not a huge task. What else do I have to do? Well, I have to go out and set up my easel. So setting up your easel it can be a task at times, especially when you first get one of those French easels, but essentially, you know, you can get that done in 10 minutes. You get everything set up and get your palette laid out, so that's not a huge task. And then you want to, you know, lay out the paint. That's not a huge task. Stain the canvas. So you just take little steps. You take it one step at a time, and then eventually you'll have a finished painting in front of you. And it's not some monumental task that it seems like. It's actually just a series of small steps. And that's a great way to come at any intimidating task. A little bit more this yellowish green up in here. So when you think you're getting close to being done, or you start wondering, okay, well, how do I know if I'm done? One thing to do would be to step back. I'm talking about way back, like 15 or 20, 30 feet, maybe even 50 feet from your painting, and see what it looks like. And a lot of times when you get that far back, if there's some mistakes, they'll stick out at you. When I step back here, I'm looking. It's like this area needs to be a little bit more dark. Get that branch to come out in front of all that stuff. I also feel like I want to see this tree come down here. So, see this. These are the things I was talking about. You'll just feel them. I'm going to go ahead and make that lightish yellow color. Yeah. And we can add a little bit of some detail to that, some dark accents like the little holes in the tree or little areas in the bark that are dark. So that kind of ties it in with this tree over here. Same color. If your eye moves around. We can even throw some of that light blue color into it like we did over here. See that light blue color? Have a little bit of that in here. Just in areas. And we can even outline it a little bit with some dark. Your eye will follow up and around like that into the composition. Almost too dark right in there. Come back with some leaves and cover that up. And before I call it finished, I'm going to take the small brush, the tiniest little brush I have right now is a round. It's like a number 1 or number 2. And I just want to make some very lyrical, very small branches that come up and around. Some dark, some light. Just Just add a little variety to them. And we're getting close to calling this one done. So remember, it's not about how long you spend working on a painting. Some of my best paintings have been done in less than an hour. What matters is, are you able to focus your mind while you're painting it and make sure that everything is coming out the way you want it to. And I like a painting that's painted quickly because it encompasses the whole experience without being broken up. So that's the Italian word for that is alla prima, and it means all at once. And I'm not saying that's a hard, fast rule that you have to do every time. But if you can paint a painting like that all at once, then there's no need to go back into it, because you've captured the moment. You've captured the impression of what it was you were after. So this painting will be available on my website, kylebuckland.com. I have a whole body of work there that's available for purchase. So if you see something you like, don't hesitate to send me a message. And I'll be happy to get back to you, and we'll figure out the details to get it to you, so you can add it to your collection or start a collection if you're just starting. And I'll be back with another video probably in the next week or two. I promise I won't leave you hanging like I did last time. And I hope everybody is enjoying the classes and getting excited about going out there and painting. We're coming here in the I'm in the northeast or eastern quarter of the United States. We're starting to get into some really nice, cool autumn days. They'll be coming in the next month or so. So I appreciate everybody watching and tuning in. I appreciate all the likes, and we've got a lot of new subscribers. We just we've passed 3,000 subscribers, so that's awesome. I mean, literally, I turned away from the channel just for a little bit because I was working on some other things, and because of the problems I had with the videos, and I came back and it was like I gained 700 new subscribers, and the videos are getting thousands of views. So don't think that I overlook any of that. I mean, it's really means a lot to me, and I know there's some questions on there I need to get back and answer. I haven't gone through and looked at the comments on the videos, so if you're commenting, I will get to you. Feel free, if you have any questions, to leave them in the comments of the video, or you can email me at kyle.buckland@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell for notifications on the channel. Check out the Patreon page if you want to become a patron, or if you just want to support the channel, you can send me a donation at kyle.buckland@gmail.com. You can send a PayPal payment that way. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you're getting out there and enjoying painting, and I look forward to making another video in the next couple weeks. So take care and happy painting.